everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Car Catharsis. I want to preface this episode by saying it's going to be really long. It's going to be very deep, very vulnerable, like every Car Catharsis episode. Because today, especially, we're going to be diving into the concept of heartbreak around friendships. For me, this topic has been incredibly influential in my life in terms of my personal maturation, growing up, and pivoting in my young adulthood from a naive sense of understanding to a more vigilant, in-depth awareness of myself and the way that I navigate social situations and relationships in general. And because of that, I wanted to give more awareness to you guys and just awareness in general to the topic, because I know if I were to look at myself a year or two ago, I would have loved to have this type of content or this type of advice and just sense of relatability reflected back to me, because it was really rough and a very isolating, lonely time, and I didn't feel as though many people could resonate with my experience when I was going through it. So I hope that what I share will be a sense of paying it forward to people who do need to hear this and people who do need to feel like their experience is being reflected back to them. So the way that I'm going to be structuring the rest of this episode is going to be in 3 sections. I will be sharing a couple old voice memos that I recorded while I was going through the thick of this quote-unquote friendship heartbreak or falling out with a certain person. So I'll be going through 2 old ones and then 1 present one and my reflections upon this topic today. So that's why it's pretty long. It's because I'm going through those 3 sections, but it's kind of delineating a natural progression of going through a felt heartbreak or going through the dismantling of a really close connection with someone and the natural emotions that manifest or present from that circumstance. So I'm going to kick it off with the first voice memo, which was probably from around a year ago or several months ago, and then I'll hop back in, introduce the second section, and then the third. So here is the first one. So life just feels really terrible. At the moment, it just feels really terrible. My issues are not as terrible as some other people may be facing, and that's great, okay. But I'm not gonna just invalidate myself. There's just like streams and streams of thoughts that I can't escape from that just continue to rush through my mind, and it's like, yes, I can go out and work and go out and go to class and go to the gym, but once I come back to myself and just me, it all feels sharp. It all feels just trapped in disdain, trapped in confusion and like bitterness and like disappointment. You know, it's like come back to myself and nothing's left. Nothing is to be enjoyed. It's just all broken. And if you only have yourself and you don't have anyone else really to go to be that safe space, it's like you kind of forced to sweep and clean your own house. And making myself that safe space, or making my own person, you know, reliable, no longer having the capacity to escape to another person for that same space, and not allowing myself to do that is really difficult. And it's where the challenge resides. I'm just trying to define things. You know, it gets very confusing sometimes. I'm just like, was this person someone that contained admirable aspects? Yes. Were they also someone who hurts me and left me with a lot of pain? Yes. So there's just a lot of back and forth, and that brings a lot of back and forth emotion, whether it's negative or positive, or the sense of longing. And then that sense of longing leads me to believe that there may be limerence there. And then how do we dismantle the limerence? And so it just feels like this treading along thick, muddied water. Walking in mud, you get so tired so quickly, and the amount of distance that you make is so small. It's like walking in mud going uphill. Just all feels so slow, tiring, and you get such little progress in such a long time. Like, I wish this was an easier process and wasn't such like a stripping process and a lonesome process. It's difficult to define because you have to come to know yourself, okay? So once you know yourself, where am I at? Who am I and who do I want to become? It's just the foundation needs to be set first. Yeah. And setting that foundation is really difficult because it feels like you have to do it on your own. And I feel like I've been so downtrodden and like pinned up against a wall for all these points of pain and issues with people that whole confidence, charisma, and joy has like such a hard time coming through because of all the pain and that severance and disconnection with community and leaving ideas and ideals, clinging on to reality. All that is difficult. All that is difficult, and I just want to make the change. I want to be changed and transformed. It's seeming to take a lot out of me to get my focus cleared, to get my house cleared and swept and put into order. It feels really difficult to do that.
Acting like they love me, but their hearts are filled with evil. I know.
So, in that voice memo, I said that when I came back to myself, it was like coming back to nothing. It was like coming back to something that was shattered in a way. And at the time, this is a very old voice memo, as I said, but at the time I didn't really have the tools and I was not equipped with the skills to be there for myself. Like, I didn't really fully grasp self-compassion or fully grasp things relating to like subconscious needs and underlying needs that were unmet. I didn't really know how to have a full relationship with myself at the time, and I was just becoming cognizant of certain patterns that were showing up for me. I was in a very unique position where a lot of the people around me I didn't really have a close, trusted relationship with, and the people who I did were very busy or they were very indwelled in their own personal issues where it didn't feel suitable for me to lean on them at the time. And I know like they would have been helpful. It was a lot to ask for that type of help from regarding their situation. And then other cases, like I would go to people and I would suffer from being rejected or being mischaracterized or having my circumstance be misconstrued in some way. And so there were definitely drawbacks to reaching out to other people. And so I was put in a very unique position where the people I was going to weren't very helpful, or the people that I wanted to go to weren't available. And so I was left to look at myself for the first time for that type of assistance, for that type of support and emotional support. And I realized that when looking at myself and looking inwards for that support, I hadn't strengthened anything to provide that sense of support for myself. And I realized it was like coming to a house that was empty, that was like had no comfort, had no substance inside of it, had no warmth inside of it. It was just empty. I would equate building a relationship with yourself to filling up your own home and making it your own, making it something that you are comfortable coming back to, even when all external supports are unavailable or down, aren't adequate enough. And so you can always rely on your own house to provide you with that sense of support when you're not doing well, when you're not feeling well. Like, imagine, like, metaphorically, if you were coming back from school or back from work and you just like picked up a random cold and you're like so tired and sick, and you come back to a house that's just like empty. All the cupboards are empty. There's no tea, there's no hot water. It's just not comfortable. Versus you picked up a cold from work or school and you come back home to a cozy home with a diffuser, with tea, with hot water, with first shower. Like, you have fluffy towels. Like, you have all the amenities you need to recuperate from that sickness, and you're fully confident that you'll be able to recover with ease, to get back to work, to get back to school. And so it's like the same thing emotionally. When you are able to self-regulate, caretake yourself, and be there for your own person in times of emotional vulnerability or distress, you will be able to pick yourself back up to get back into the real world much faster. And it's not something that just like happens once. It's an ongoing thing. Like, we're always, as humans, meeting challenge, meeting external stressors or distressors constantly. And so it's important to constantly maintain your sense of stability in yourself and feeling like, okay, I have something to go back to. I find myself as a reliable person, and I'm confident that I'm able to take care of myself and that I can follow through on the promises that I make and the obligations that I've promised to keep. I will keep them. Like, I'm fully capable. And like I said, it's a very deep topic, and I feel like I'm still grasping the fullness of this concept. But I just wanted to highlight especially that like vulnerable moment I had like several months ago, because I feel like it may resonate with a lot of people. To give that voice memo more context, I was fresh. I would say I was like fresh out of a relational disconnect, like leaving a specific person. And so I was just going through the motions of no longer having a sense of support in my life that I once did. And it can feel really discombobulating when you've been receiving comfort or relief from a certain type of person, and then they no longer are in your life, and you can no longer go back to that person. I wanted to get this out verbally because I feel like it's just been festering or bubbling up internally for a minute, or like for a few days at least. I've just been thinking a lot about, as annoying as it is to admit, the friendship between and I in the past. And it only came, because I was deliberating about my actions in that period of time, like a year ago, from a different perspective, from a different viewpoint. I've been doing a lot of self-work, shadow work, spiritual work, whatever. I've been doing a lot of deep introspection on myself post that friendship disintegration, and a lot of what I found made so much sense. I went into a period of resolve and acceptance and I guess like peace over it, and like I felt as though I may have overcome this, and then you get to that certain perspective or that certain level of understanding of yourself and the whole dynamic or the friendship and its disintegration process, and you're like, okay, maybe it's over. And you're at this pinnacle, this peak of this hill, and you're looking down and you see it from this whole other perspective, and you just like bust down, break down crying. Because yes, it felt one way when you were at the bottom. It felt terrible. I felt completely dismantled at the bottom when everything just broke down at the beginning of it. I felt confused, frustrated. I felt insane in some points because I didn't understand myself. Things didn't make sense. Emotions did not make sense. And I was just figuring things out, stumbling on the bottom of this hill. And as I decided to climb,
once I got to the top, like the whole journey process, it was refreshing. I'm like climbing up this metaphorical hill, taking deep breaths of new air, fresh air, seeing new sights, being grateful for the environment around me, being grateful for the work that I'm doing for myself. And once I reached the top of this little hill, I looked down and looked at everything that was from a different perspective, and I just break down. When I journaled a few days ago, I was journaling about the past friendship from this new perspective, with all this new understanding of human behavior, my own behavior, psychological components to relationships, blah 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 blah. Now that I have these new eyes to look at the past through, it just hurts even deeper. It hurts in a different way. It feels like it feels fresh, in a sense. Like it feels old and like still as it is in the past. It's not presently active. It's more like retroactive, because I'm looking at something in the past with new eyes from a fresh perspective. And so it feels very much like a different wave has hit me of this processing that friendship, quote unquote, breakup, or friendship disintegration, or severance, or whatever. Like, it just hits different. And so looking at the past retroactively from a new perspective, both my own behavior and theirs, and the dynamic between us, like, it hurts at a different pain level. Like, it hurts at a different pain point. And I didn't think that this would have come. I did not expect it to. Like, I very much am working through like black and white thinking and trying to get away from that and looking at life more nuanced, because yeah, I used to think like, okay, black and white. The black and white point of view is things didn't work out, you move on from that person, and then you move on and you're done with them and you're completely over it. Like, my brain did not comprehend that. No, maybe there are 2 points, but there are several hundred points in between this entire process of you healing and growing from this severance or this disintegration with this relationship that you had. Like, there may be point A, point B, but there may be 127 points in between point A and B. But black and white thinking just had me believe like, oh, okay, it's gonna hurt like hell for a season, and then I'm gonna be okay, and we're gonna be fine, and like, we're gonna move on, and yay. But oh girl, I'm probably still in point A when I thought I was in point B, but I'm probably like point A sub point 50. Like, it hurts from a different perspective, and I feel like it's just like a depressive feeling lingering throughout like this little period of processing what I uncovered after journaling. And that is just like a whole phenomenon in it of itself. Experiencing things from a new perspective, experiencing a different type of hurt or pain or weight, like a depressive weight from something that happened in the past. So I think that's a phenomenon in and of itself. And then all the little things, incidents, scenarios within that personally that happened between me and this person, that's a different thing. Yeah, I just think that's really, I had not understood this. I didn't understand that this was a thing. I knew it was a process, but I didn't understand it could be like this. I do find it frustrating though that for my specific case with this person, I don't even know if I got like a good portion or a good period to metabolize all the emotions from that disintegration or from that little friendship breakup properly, because there was like a buffer of another person in between. If I were to just synoptically describe the linear timeline of that period of my life, me and friend A, we'll say me and friend A or friend 1. Me and friend 1, we fell out, and then some time passed where I was with myself, but I had no understanding of like the inner workings of my own brain and how I was processing emotions. I was just out there distracting myself with life tasks, work, and just devoting myself to things, but literally just being depressed. Like, I was like, Oh my gosh, like I didn't understand how to handle the emotions I was feeling because I never felt that before. I just was like, oh, sure, I expect to be sad, but like you get over it, right? And I just be at work and then like break down like in the middle of work, and I'd have to dismiss myself to the bathroom for a minute. I just had to, get myself together, I would say. I had to, like, pick myself up and get myself together. Or I would, like, be at work and see them walking by and get, like, a whole wave of anxiety, and just, like, somatically my body would freaking shut down, and I would just, like, evade. and I would get so anxious that my body would, like, the way that anxiety would manifest or present itself physiologically for me was a tightening in my throat, and then also shaking, like physically shaking. And then if I ever saw them walking by my work or saw them walking on campus or something like that, my body would just be struck into like this nervous breakdown, and it was a lot to manage because I had no idea how to even self-regulate through anxiety. And so I felt like alone in that sense. Of, I don't even know what's happening. Why do I feel anxious? And I would shame myself for feeling anxious. And I'd be like, bro, you need to get it together. Like, this shouldn't be a problem. Like, why are you so anxious? And I'd just be like in this hellhole of anxiety. I would be also going through like minor depressive episodes throughout the few months I was at school or whatever, and I just felt like I couldn't go to anyone with these problems. And if I did go to people, I just felt like nobody really could evaluate what I was feeling. I don't know why, but like people don't really, from my experience, people don't assess a friendship breakup as something to really take into consideration. They're like, oh, you'll find friends, they're gonna come around, like it's no big deal. Or they'll consider your feelings and they'll be like, oh, I understand why you're sad, and then they just expect you to get over it. Like they don't check in. Like at least for me, like nobody was really like checking in on that, even though it was a really huge pain point for me, because again, like there was a lot of things like compiled within that dynamic. There was just a lot of things and a lot of layers that were difficult for me to evaluate personally, and even harder to recite to another person, if that makes sense. Like I was having such a hard time comprehending why I was feeling impacted or felt so much, hurt, or felt so much confusion and frustration emotionally and also mentally and spiritually, like with things like that. Why did I feel these emotions and the weight of them? I didn't understand the why for myself, and I was trying to like bring these contemplations to other people that probably didn't fully make sense, and they probably couldn't fully grasp it, or like people weren't as equipped as I probably needed them to be for them to really resonate or understand my experience. And so that was also frustrating, feeling like the people that I had there for support weren't really equipped to support me through this situation. That felt awful. So yeah, I was just experiencing a lot of things and didn't really have the proper outlets to express them in or with, and wrestle with the contemplations that I was wrestling with alongside these people. So again, that was frustrating. And so it was hard to not have a proper reflection of my experience back to me, like to feel like, okay, I'm not insane for feeling these things. I shouldn't feel ashamed for feeling these things, or I shouldn't feel ashamed for being anxious. All of that was not really there. Like I had to really go through a slope of understanding, one, I no longer have this friend one or friend A to rely on for a sense of support, comfort, and relief, emotional relief. Like they're gone. And when I went down the list of all these other people's quote unquote friends that I had in my life, they weren't equipped or readily available to support me in the ways that I needed them to be. So again, going down that slope. And then when I came to the bottom of that slope, it was literally just me. I realized that I was going to be the only one to provide the support I needed for myself.
And I had to learn and grapple with learning those skills to support me.
So it was only then that I reached the bottom point of that slope where I was forced to reconcile these heavy contemplations within myself, with myself, because every external source of support was not going to do it for me. I had to literally assess things with myself, by myself, and yes, have those contemplations assisted with godly wisdom, but also looking at things from a different viewpoint, like psychologically, through counseling, therapy, whatever. And so, yeah, trying to look inward from a healthy perspective and not a shame-filled perspective was that bottom slope point. So, like, again, synoptically describing this linear timeline of falling out with friend A or falling out with friend 1, and then going downward that slope and coming to the point where I had to reconcile these issues within myself, by myself. I had that little moment with myself, but then I quickly fell into looking again for external support, and this is when like friend 2 hit, or friend B, which was a whole other scenario where I had tried to, I guess, cling onto another person to cling onto another person for external support again, but just it was not a good situation, and it was not like the healthiest friendship. It was one of those friendships where things become very deep or vulnerable very quickly, and you try to force a connection with someone out of excessive self-disclosure from the jump, and that is a very dangerous tactic, or a very dangerous subconscious tactic that gets played out, you know, if you go into the realm of insecure attachment. So yeah, so thinking about this timeline, having that fallout with friend 1, going into a small window of confusion, slight introspection, and feeling a wave of all these emotions that weren't really resolved or did not reach a point of resolve, and then getting swept into another friendship out of this feeling of needing support or having this dire need to externalize and have someone on the outside regulate my emotions for me. And that goes down the road of insecure attachment as well, feeling like you need someone to regulate the emotions that you're experiencing for you, rather than relying upon yourself to self-regulate, learning those skills, learning healthy coping mechanisms, and dealing with that in a healthy way. So I think when I look at this timeline, I really stumbled into like a little buffer zone that halted my progression and healing from that fallout with the first friend. And so now when I look at things retrospectively, I guess I'm for the first time metabolizing all of those emotions that were unresolved from way back then. Even though it was a long time ago, it was like maybe almost a year ago or about a year ago. Like, it's considerably in the past and is not active, but I don't know if this is the right word, but it feels retroactive because I'm looking at things from a new perspective, from a higher level of understanding emotionally, and feeling this delayed grief, or feeling this delayed sense of metabolizing those old emotions that did not get resolved, that did not get processed properly, because I had that buffer period of the second friend. And yeah, I just looking at things soberly from this new perspective is like hard, and there's a sense of like grief attached to it, like delayed grief. But at the same time, I feel like this is a process that nobody really talks about, that nobody really sheds light on. At least in my own personal experience in personal life, like people superficially address, oh yeah, we had that fallout and we disconnected and things just didn't work out, but you know, I'm healing, I'm growing. Like, people make themselves seem so much better. Maybe they are. Maybe it's just me that's not, you know, that's not normal or whatever. Yeah, I'm not. But I just feel like this is something that I feel like should be a little bit more normalized to speak about and to assess for ourselves rather than shaming ourselves for feeling negative emotions or feeling anxiety amidst something that is as painful as a quote-unquote friendship breakup or relational disintegration. Like, this is a hard thing to confront, and it can be very mentally debilitating, and people give more weight to probably romantic relationships falling out or breaking up, but there's not much consideration taken for friendships falling off or friendships growing apart or breaking off. It's just, there's not much attention that is given to that area, even though I personally think that intimacy can be considered platonically but also romantically. Like, there can be a lot of intimacy that is fostered between two friends platonically without any romantic interventions, like simply platonic intimacy. I think that can be such a strong component in a relationship, whereas people may have this connotation that, oh, friends are just friends and they just hang out with you and blah 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 blah. But I think that just has to do with the semantic problem of people not defining what they want and value and need from friendships. At least from my perspective, in my experience growing up, like, nobody taught me, like, you should have some values and, like, a definition of what you need from friends. People would apply that logic to romantic relationships. What do you want out of a romantic relationship? What do you want out of this person? Da 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 da. They would give that consideration to romantic relationships, whereas when it comes to friendships, people just expect friendships to just come along, to work, and if they don't work, then you weren't meant to have that friend, or they're just in your life for a season. But I think that truly we should have, at least for my life, I'm gonna have definition for what do I want out of a friendship. What kind of friendships do I need to help feel supported in this life? And how do I want to contribute to the friendships that I show up in? And that's based off of my personality, what I need, and the type of people that I would want in my life, you know, preferentially. Like, I'm a very deep person and I love to have in-depth talks, but I also love to have humorous talks because laughing is literally my favorite thing to do in the world. So I like to oscillate between the humorous side of life and just chilling and hanging out and having fun, but also having that flexibility and bandwidth and capacity to have in-depth conversations, to have, you know, rich substantive talks about life, about growth, and etc. You know, so it helps me, like, this entire process of going through intervals with different friends and different fallouts and setting up boundaries and making, you know, decisions to no longer pursue a friendship, or, you know, being faced with things that supposedly didn't work out. Like, it helps me understand the value of having that definition for friendship and generally relationships, and having standards. Like, the standards have raised. The standards have been risen, and I think that's a good thing. And the accountability and standards for my own life have risen, and I think that's a great thing. So out of all of this content, what I really would love people to understand, and I guess if I was making this for myself, like a little Good Luck Charlie episode, or making this for the younger version of me, or like a younger version of who I used to be, I would definitely want myself to understand the importance of knowing yourself, being able to be that safe space for yourself when there's nobody around. Like, if you don't have anybody to talk to, yes, pray about it. Yes, go run to the Lord, run to the Father, and, like, consider that in prayer, but also know how to self-regulate, know how to regulate your emotions, and have that metacognitive consciousness or metacognitive conversation and evaluation of your thoughts of, I'm thinking these things, I'm thinking all these shameful thoughts, let me step on the outside of that and even evaluate, are those shameful thoughts productive, or are they just denigrating to myself? And things like that. Just being able to self-regulate and think about and evaluate my thoughts from an external observation. So I would want myself to be my own companion and understand the significance that can make to your life when you are your own friend and you are your own safe space, because it hurts less when you have a safe space to come back to when you're going through a breakup or you're going through a fallout. It hurts less when you have someone to come back to, aka you come back to yourself and you feel supported, you feel validated, you feel like, oh, I can count on myself to take care of myself when I'm in a low position, versus what I was in. I had really no sense of self-support. I didn't know how to manage my emotions. I was shaming myself for having certain negative emotions, and then just falling into these cycles of just do your work, like, just, you know, you don't need to really think about that, like, it'll just all resolve over time, and just like falling into this anxious pit of it was not helpful, and constantly needing to externalize. But if you have that safe space within yourself, you know how to manage yourself when things get rough, when things get rocky, when things get isolating and lonely. Like, hey, you're not gonna really be alone because you gotta have yourself. So I think that is what I would want to leave you, the audience, and also if I was talking to my past self, I would leave myself with that. Just be your own friend, understand what that entails, and, you know, do the work. Be introspective, make the time to journal, make the time to contemplate these things, because at the end of the day, no one else will. At the end of the day, not everyone is gonna really care. I just wanted to leave you with that contemplation, with that proposition of like, hey, what if you're your own friend? What if you were there when you needed someone the most? Yeah.